Hello there, this is the final of our We Have Ways from Arnhem, episode 9, day 9, September the 25th, 1944 is what we're here to talk about. And we're by the river, aren't we, James?
Yeah, it's a beautiful afternoon, isn't it? And what
It's
a
glorious.
lovely countryside around here. I mean, we've got the upper Rhine here. It's pretty wide. What would you say that's about? It's good 7,500 yards across, isn't it?
Yeah,
Something like
it's
that.
100 metres, and it's a big, fast-flowing trade river, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to swim it.
No, I wouldn't, but people do. We're standing by a memorial here, and it says this memorial has been erected in the year 2003 and unveiled by Sergeant M.J. Potter, one of those who did go across here. Today's youth swim across again to honour and commemorate this act. May this be a sign of everlasting friendship. Well, absolutely.
Why not?
But we're looking back now, and one of the things driving down here, Al, was I was really struck by actually you're on quite a bit of high ground.
Yep.
On the perimeter. We're looking back at the perimeter. We're looking at Oosterbeek Church.
The old church at the bottom of the bottom right-hand corner, yeah.
Lots of woods.
Yep.
We can see a tower about, I suppose, what's that, 3/4 of a mile away?
Yeah, which is where the Hevedorp ferry is.
Yes.
Or was.
But it's all wooded. There's little buildings and stuff. But it's only about a third of a mile, isn't it? The width of the perimeter.
Yeah.
Something like that. And goes back maybe a mile.
Maybe half a mile. But, it's next to nothing. And we're on the flat polder, the floodplain of the river, of the River Rhine here.
There's now a big high maize field growing, but probably wouldn't have been back in the day.
And to our right, so to the east, is the railway bridge, which of course was blown on the first day when Two Para got there. Because this is the route Two Para came through, along the bottom here, because they were sent to take the railway bridge and then the road bridge. So they had lots of
and the Tiger route was just along here as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you're right though. There's high ground. It's not the worst defensive position in the world. No. Because there's high ground. There's by the old church here. There's a corner that if you're sending tanks, you've got to come around the corner. So you're vulnerable if you're sending an armoured vehicle, unless you're very well infiltrated with infantry.
Yeah, for the most part, you know, any vehicle, whether it's tracked or otherwise, is going to use the main arteries, i.e. roads, tracks and lanes and stuff.
But so this patch here, and the thing is, looking at the map, I had it in my head that this was bigger, but this patch is the evacuation route for the night of the 25th, when, like a collapsing bag, as Urquhart called it, modelled on the evacuation at Gallipoli. I mean, we love a good evacuation. They left people firing guns, they left wounded firing guns, they left the medics up, and then they came down to the river and were ferried out. And you'd already had an attempt to bring the Poles over when the Poles landed at night, and some Poles got across.
The Poles are just a little bit further along,
Yeah, they're down in Driel, basically to the south of us. And then once 30 Corps get here, the Dorsets, they send a company of Dorsets over the river.
As from 43rd West.
Yeah, from 43rd West, arguably as a kind of like, look, we could try and save you. At least we've made an effort before they decide to pull the plug on the whole thing. And there's a lot of discussion on the you get these very odd set of messages go back and forwards from Urquhart to Browning. At one point, Browning writes to Urquhart and he signs off by saying, "I myself am in fine fettle," and he's really not paying attention. He's not grasped what's happening. I'm in fine fettle. I'm engaged by the enemy 8,000 yards to my south. But nothing to worry me. And you think, you absolute
nova.
Yeah. Because this is
8,000 yards. That's kind of 4 miles.
Exactly. It's the Alamo here. And Zulu all rolled into one. It's like it's the Zulamo. And a desperate last stand going on here for him to. I mean, but we could talk about Browning another time.
Hope you're all right. I'm really well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hope you're fine. Hope this radio message finds you well. That's what it is, isn't it? But they put string up. They put string up and lines of string, parachute cord. As guide ropes to come down here. They tore up fabric and put it over their boots. And then a lot of the men
they got out of the labyrinth exactly all those years ago.
Exactly. And they came down to the riverbank, and a lot of men stripped off because they realised immediately that they'd sink if they were wearing kit. Swam the river, and the Germans had machine guns on lines that every now and again would strafe they figured out something was up, and there'd been something every night, so they were probably going to try and harass whatever's happening on the riverbank. Fired machine guns on them, and they got. I mean, it's disputed to figure how many. I think it's about 1,700 men. But I might be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. But 1,700 out of a division of 10,500 plus Polish brigade, that's not great.
It's diabolical, isn't it?
8,000 men casualties, that's a lot.
And one of the things I think is really interesting is that Urquhart, comes out, he escapes, and you is that what you'd do, or do you stay with the wounded and
do you sink with the Titanic?
Do you sink with the Titanic, or do you bugger off? And he buggers
I don't know.
off.
I don't think there's much. Personally, I don't think there's much benefit of having generals being captured.
No. He'd have been paraded about. And
he'd been paraded around and grilled and all the rest of it. And he's limit to what he's going to say. But there's a sort of, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's right that he should get himself out personally.
And then he goes to see Browning in Nijmegen, who keeps him waiting for 2.5 hours in the middle of the night. Comes out absolutely immaculate in his custom-made uniform that's tailor-made for him, his boots super shiny, and says, "You've done awfully well. I just want to tell you what a marvellous job you've done." And Urquhart in his book says, "That meeting was entirely inadequate." That's what he says about it. And you think, there's all this stiff upper lip.
Browning doesn't come out well.
No, Browning comes out badly. And there's one book.
Yeah, go on, say.
Well, there's that one book, the William Buckingham book, which is worth a read if people have read that, where at the end he sort of describes Browning as like an Alistair MacLean villain. Like, if he's like the turncoat in a Where Eagles Dare style thing, like doing everything he can to screw this up malevolently. I mean, obviously he wasn't, but he doesn't come out well.
You've been reading this new biography of him, and I'm just sort of staggered that he goes into battle with 3 teddy bears. I mean, sort of charmingly eccentric or just complete dickhead.
Well, in the end, what's the difference? These are questions of taste, aren't they?
I suppose so.
But what is extraordinary? This is another one of these things that we keep having happen to us coming to this site, is how small it all is. This is desperate, shit's great disaster, isn't it?
Yep.
How narrow this is, and that they basically hold on for the last 5 days of the battle in the perimeter, and I mean,
You can imagine it, though, can't you? It's night time. It's the 25th of September. It's dark. I mean, there's not much moon at this point. No. I mean, it was no moon at all on the 17th.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why they couldn't
go at night.
Go and drop at night. Very, very dark. You can imagine feeling your way through the tape. I mean, sense of sort of, I suppose, sort of desperation, kind of sense of failure that you kind of haven't achieved what you're supposed to, but kind of hope that you're going to get out of this mess.
Yep.
Really conflicting emotions.
Well, and leaving people behind.
And leaving your mates, your dead mates and stuff. And you're out and they're still there and the wounded and so on. You would just, such a kind of an amazing mixture of emotions must be running through you. And then to get here and to cross the Rhine at night, in a major river.
And you haven't slept for days.
You haven't eaten much. You're completely
wired, fried. I mean, I think the other thing that's notable here with the geography is, we can see the railway bridge over there. I can't see the road bridge from here, right? From Oosterbeek, from this part of Oosterbeek. And the drop zones are to our west, even further away.
Yeah.
And it really and I know why they picked where they picked and why they did it and what the reasons were, but it just seems so sort of
probably just a bridge too far, really.
Oh God. I was going to say it's bananas, but there you go. Yeah, so definitely, I think we're going a bridge too far, absolutely. Huge dispute has anyone ever said that, of course.
Of course.
But there we go.
But I was just thinking that right now.
Yeah, well, good.
I mean, when you think about Market Garden, I mean, the thing that I find just so incredible about it, there's so many things that work against it.
Yep.
There's so much that could go wrong.
Yeah.
What is amazing is that the 4th Dorsets, who are from Vertical, do actually cross this river and actually make it here.
75 of them get into the perimeter.
It's actually almost works.
Yep.
And the 4th Dorsets, I should just say, I've always been interested in them, and I kind of followed their fortunes in Normandy. These were the guys that were on Hill 112.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Here they are, month later, after their kind of turmoil in July 1944, a couple of months later, here they are kind of crossing the Lower Rhine.
Because that's the
Upper Rhine, rather.
I mean, that's the thing. Always the thing to remember here is yes, 1st Airborne are new to the war in Western Europe. Everyone else isn't. And there's the famous apocryphal tale of the paratrooper who's swum the Rhine and he takes the guardsman, sees the guardsman and goes, "Where the fucking hell have you been?" And the guardsman says, "Where the fucking hell have you been? I've been here since June."
Yeah.
Which kind of...
Put that in your pipe.
Yeah, kind of sums it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the criticisms have been many, and I guess to a large extent they are justified. I mean, I remember when we were first talking about the setup of it, though, and we were talking about Linnet and Comet and all the rest of it. I mean, you still can't get away from the fact that you have got the first Allied Airborne Army. You've got an army of airborne troops, and what are you going to do with them? These are all, highly trained, highly disciplined, motivated and expensive to train troops, and you've got to flipping use them. And if it had worked, you can't play counterfactuals and what ifs and stuff. No. But they really did genuinely think it might hasten the end of the war, and the war might be over by Christmas, and that's got to be worth the punt.
Yeah.
The problem with it is there's just so many assumptions. There's so many, it's the whole thing about the intelligence picture. I mean, we all know that kind of Brian Urquhart's memories is kind of slightly faulty. That Cornelius Lyon overcooks that a Spitfire didn't fly over. There's no record of that or anything like that. Actually, they had a pretty good intelligence picture. No one was denying it. It's just the processing of that intelligence that's faulty. It's not the gathering of it, and that is a fundamental flaw. And you sort of see victory fever taking hold, don't you? But, they sense it. They've had the enemy on the run. They've achieved so much.
Wouldn't you have?
No, absolutely. My point is, I suppose I'm being sort of broadly sympathetic to the whole conceit, because I think. There's so many factors that are driving in it. There's sort of political factors that involve, which are always going to be involved by this stage of the war, and always involved when you're in a kind of, a big important coalition where the balance of power within that coalition is starting to shift quite substantially. So all those political considerations are also going to come into play as well. So you can sort of see how it evolves. You can see how the decision's made. I mean, I don't think you can look at Eisenhower or Monty or any of these guys and sort of go, oh, that was just a totally stupid, moronic decision. You can understand the decision-making process, why Market Garden happened. But you can't get away from the fact that it is deeply flawed on so many levels. Yeah,
and that every error impacts and compounds every
another error. So they just sort of it's a sort of stacking of errors, isn't it? Yeah. Which leads up to one big mountain of erroneous decision making.
And then of course you get into the argument, well, they should have taken the Scheldt. This was a waste of time. But if they wouldn't
have had to worry about the Scheldt if you've got this one easy.
Succeeded, you wouldn't have had to worry about the Scheldt. Exactly. So that's a what if or a shoulda, woulda, coulda that kind of fine. But they did think this was going to work. They didn't do this thinking it was going to misfire.
I think they thought it was going to be a tall order, didn't they? I mean, I think they thought it was inherent with risk, but it was one worth taking because of the circumstances.
There's the ferry crossing the river.
Oh, look at that!
If only the Poles had known about the ferry.
I thought the ferry was sunk.
It was sunk. I mean, that's obviously a new one, James. 75 years ago, mate.
I mean the Poles. It was sunk by the time the Poles got here.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Sunk early on.
So they couldn't have used it.
And there's that little bit of high ground there, of course. And Urquhart gets a lot of criticism for not deploying on the high ground. But like,
it's quite a long way away.
It's quite a long way away. And also, he wasn't making any it wasn't he was going, right, my master plan from now on. It was like, oh God, they're coming at us from the north, south, east and west. Where do we put people? How do we best arrange this? Everyone dig in, hold on, and stick it out. And he moved the independent company down from the northwest of the pocket of the perimeter down to the middle by the Schoenert. He did do it. He rearranged the furniture a bit, but it wasn't like these were battle-winning decisions.
Yep. The other thing, of course, is that it's not as though the Allies have the monopoly of poor decision-making either, because. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you look at it. The decision of Model not to blow the bridge at Nijmegen is seriously questionable, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I understand why, because it looks defeatist, and once you've blown it up, and all the rest of it. But the moment that's blown,
whole thing's over.
It's good night, Charlie, for Market Garden.
And they blow enough bridges further south.
Yeah, well, Zon and everything.
101st have lots to deal with in those terms, But to not blow up it is really peculiar. And you think of being those first tanks going over it, thinking, surely they're going to blow this up now. Yeah. Surely I'm toast.
Peter Carrington.
Well, someone the other day tweeted me. My grandfather was at Arnhem. Peter Carrington's a coward, and you think, well,
what?
Well, if you want, right? But he still had to drive over that bridge that might blow up at any minute. Because it's the thing of they get across the bridge and they don't push on and they wait because they had no artillery.
The reason why they don't is because they don't have any artillery. They've got no infantry support. Yeah. It's not the job that they're to do, and they've got a single track around across which they have no idea what the strength of the enemy is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an entirely
Look, I
reasonable
know.
decision at the time.
I know.
I know,
It's all
but
right, James.
I'm feeling indignant about that.
No, fair enough. Because I read it and I thought I'm not going to. That's one of those.
Don't
people
rise to it. Don't rise to it.
I didn't rise to it. I just let that one go. Because although if you are here and you aren't relieved by 30 Corps, and you might think they should have got their finger out. You know, there's the Frost famously said he always thought if Patton had been coming up Hell's Highway, they'd have got here. They'd have done it. He'd have done it, and held Patton in this sort of high regard. But you know, that's like regimental. One British regiment going at another British regiment. You know, that's kind of normal.
Yeah. And certainly the airborne forces and the have always been slagging each other off, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, we were in a pub last night, and they rapidly turned on each other. The Paris we met. Some signalman then, you know, and he ran into being a signalman and not an infantryman, and you know, so while we supped our extremely strong Dutch beer, which I've been suffering from today. But anyway, I think we can wrap this up. We hope you've enjoyed this week and a bit of Market Garden podcasting. You can hear the railway line in the background.
It's certainly been absolutely fascinating to be here, hasn't it? And walking the ground and seeing it and seeing the sense of scale, which is just something you just don't get from a photograph or a map. Or
no. And you know normally like the back of your hand.
Yeah.
You compare this to the divisional area that 6th Airborne held, the ridge around Breville and the castle there, the chateau there. It's much bigger.
Yeah.
They're not on their arse like this. And I remember talking to a guy who was in 6th Airborne a long time ago, and we talked about Normandy. We talked about Vaisal. And I think he was an 8-para, and I said, you know, what did you think about? What did you guys say about Arnhem when that one? He goes, oh yeah, typical 1st Airborne fucking it up.
Yeah,
which take as a sort of character reference. Anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this series of podcasts. I've got to go now, and I don't want to go. I want to stay and hang around in Holland. It's very agreeable.
Me too. It's great. Lovely day.
Yeah.
Down by the Rhine.
Beautiful.
What's not to like?
Fantastic. Cheerio, everyone.
Cheerio.
Thanks for listening.